Welcome to my dungeon.
Welcome to Kuldrin's Krypt. I'm your host, Master Kuldrin. If you're new to the show, we use our combined 30 years experience to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions or visit the Krypt at kuldrinskrypt.com. On this episode of the Krypt, we're going to talk about BDSM and literature. And no, we're not discussing 50 Shades of Grey. But first, I have to say hello to my amazing co-host Funsize that has taken a lot of time reading these books and putting this episode together. Hey Funsize, how's it going?
Really good. I like how you mentioned the amount of time it takes me to read books, but it's really not that much time because I've read these books over several years and I'm a speed reader and a bibliophile. So
you bibliophile.
I mean,
you dirty girl.
I am a dirty, dirty bookworm. I can own that.
All right. Well, I am not, as you and most that know me know. So when I say that you put this together, I really mean you put this together. Before we hit the main points here, let me go ahead and hit the rules to love by, and then we'll jump straight into all these wonderful books that you have read and found over the years. With that said, rules to love by. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, kinky. That's KNKI from the Kinky app, available on all platforms. That stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. And rule number 3, the quote from Mr. Paul Young. Submission is not about authority and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. All right. I am just going to let you take it away. Like I said already a couple of times, this is your baby, and I'm excited to hear what all you have to tell us about.
What I have to tell you about is literature, and that's fiction and nonfiction, and it's an important part of every culture and every society. And of course, we have our own culture and our own society within the lifestyle. Our fictions delve into our deepest fantasies, and our nonfictions help us learn and share with others. So I've broken it down into 2 parts, naturally, nonfiction and fiction, and I'm only skimming over literally not even a 10th of what I've come across and not even a 1,000th of what is out there.
So are we going to start with the nonfictions or the fictions today?
We're going to start with nonfiction. So we have the topping and bottoming series, and if anyone's ever come across these are the topping book and the bottoming book, and it's a series of books that's been around since the mid-90s, written by Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy. They give the basics of what it is for each perspective of the lifestyle. I'm still waiting for the switching book to come out, but so far I've been pretty disappointed in that field. And Dossie Easton is also the writer of The Ethical, which explores polyamory, so definitely check her out as a writer. She knows what she's doing. Next on my list is The Ultimate Guide to Kink by Tristan Meno. I really hope I did not butcher that name. If I did, I apologize. It's a very well-written basic guide to everything you need to know when you first enter the lifestyle. And of course, there's a lot of things there for those of us who have been in it in a while. It is one of my favorite books to read and one of my favorite books to recommend. Definitely worth it. Some very good points made in that book. And then we have BDSM, How to Take Your First Steps into BDSM. It's another great book for newbies by Scarlett Dalton. We have Life, Leather, and the Pursuit of Happiness by Steve Linus. This particular book delves into the history of leather culture and the beginnings of modern BDSM as we know it. History is very important. I feel like I talk about this a lot. History is extremely important. So definitely check that out. And then there's a book that I have recommended to you, The Leatherman's Protocol Handbook by John D. Weil. How are you liking it?
As soon as I can pry it away from my wife, I will let you know. She has just been soaking it up. I think she's probably gone through it 3 times now. So I think I'm a little bit past my turn. I'm probably going to grab that from her sometime this week and take it on the road in my travels so that I can finally get into it, because I've told a couple other people about it and they are pretty much having me create a list to throw it around within the community.
Well, I guess I should have asked how she's liking it, but from what you've said 3 times in, I gather she's liking it pretty well.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right. So, other nonfictions to check out when you have a moment. Raven Caldera's books, Power Circuits, Polyamory in a Power Dynamic, and Sacred Power Holy Shrine. I've been reading Polyamory in a Power Dynamic because my husband and I have been looking at expanding our power dynamic, or lack thereof, with other people. And it's definitely got some very good points on how things don't work and how things can work if you put in the work. And I'm just a huge fan of this book. It's one I've been reading and been gnawing my way through for a couple of months now. So definitely one of my new favorites. Next we have Two Naughty Boys and their follow-up, Two Naughty Boys Back on the Ropes. It's a couple of really interesting, educational, and entertaining books learning the art of rope bondage, complete with pictures. Anytime you go into rope bondage and you're just getting started and learning, if you go to read a book without pictures, you're going to be really, really hard-pressed to figure out what some of the things
and
they're talking about are.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people have written books, really well-written books on rope bondage, but haven't included any pictures of any ties. It's amazing to me. It's like, why would you? It makes no sense. I don't know.
They have colored pictures.
Yeah. And when I was reading over your notes here, that was one of them that just really kind of launched off the page at me that I'm definitely going to check out.
I think you'll like them. They're shorter in length and to the point, which is something you like with your busy schedule. And like I said, the color pictures are really just amazing. Next, we have Elizabeth Kramer, which I know you love her writings just because she does keep things short and simple.
Mm-hmm.
She's written 6 or 7 books detailing how to be dominant and how to be submissive. And we're both huge fans for a reason. Do you have anything to add on this one? Because I know this is one you actually do recommend.
They are, like you said, short, simple books. I'm very pressed for time, and she cuts out all the fillers. There are no Stephen King type tangents involved. It is very, very well written for somebody who just needs to find out the information and soak it up, move along. It's kind of like Cliff Notes in how simple it is. So yeah, that's the reason why I always recommend Elizabeth Kramer to people, because it is that simple and anybody can read it. I mean, I have a well articulated vocabulary, but when it comes to reading, make it stupid simple, get the information and get out. That's kind of how I feel about it, because I don't have time to sit around and read a lot. I'm always on the go. That's probably one of my biggest recommendations.
The next one, which is our final nonfiction on this list, Igniting the Fire, The Art of Romantic Submission by Master Arcane. Absolutely amazing book. Can't count how many times I've read it now. But it illustrates the BDSM dynamic through the eyes of a truly caring dominant. If you want to get an idea of what you'll be reading, you can definitely go back and listen to the amazing interview between yourself, Kuldrin, and Master Arcane. I believe the episode was, I want to say episode 14 this season?
Yeah, that was episode 14, and there's a link to that in the show notes. I will say on that book that a few people that I've recommended to check that one out, they have become a little bit overwhelmed by some of the protocol in it. Because it is a high etiquette, high protocol book. And for someone who is extremely new and very apprehensive or naive to BDSM, it can be a little scary to them at first, I think. But it really is a good book. I know, as I just said with Elizabeth Kramer, that's one that I always recommend. That's always my go-to series for newbies. But after that, getting into Arcane's book, it really is so well written, and it is longer. How many pages is that one? Like 300 or so?
Yeah, it's up there in the 300 or 400s.
Yeah. And if you have an Amazon device or Google device, there is a way that you can set it up to make it an audiobook as well. That's a neat little thing that I've found with it that helps me out so I can listen to it while I'm doing other things, because it is definitely worth it. I don't want to scare anybody off from it in talking about the protocol and things like that. Just the first time through, if that's something that you are a little nervous about, and the people that I'm referring to are people that have been, I guess, super afraid of failure because it is high etiquette, high protocol. And it just makes them, like, one person called me in the midst of a panic attack. And I'm
Oh
going,
my.
and I'm just like, calm down. It's okay. This is, everything is negotiable. And that's the thing is he's talking about his relationships and how he likes to do it and his version of it. But that doesn't mean that it's set in stone and exactly the way that it should be done in every relationship. It's your BDSM. You make it yours. You own it. So just keep that in mind. Everything's negotiable, and it's what you and your partner or partners determine to be your own specific protocol, whether it's high or low or whatever the case may be. So I got to kind of give that warning a little bit just with personal experience from some people that become way overly upset with it. You said that was the final one on the list?
For nonfiction, yes.
Right.
There are, of course, dozens of others that I could go through and list, but I would be talking myself hoarse, and that doesn't make for a good podcast when you can't hear me. So
that is true.
For anyone that has any other recommendations or questions or wants more books recommended, you can, of course, join in the discussion for this particular topic on our FetLife group, and I will be creating a post and opening a conversation to that point probably sometime later this week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you would do a pinned discussion or list on this. Go ahead and take these and whatever else that you have and make a pinned note there so that it's easy to find. And I know this is one of the first places that people go to is books, and we want to make sure that they're going to, I don't want to be overly judgy here, but we and just about everybody else knows that there's some books that just are not really appropriate. So I think you would be the perfect person to start that. Certainly not me.
I will start that. So next, we're going to dive into the fiction books. The perfect starting point for this particular half of the list is rather obvious, but as you somewhat said, not exactly appropriate for newbies if they're looking for something to base their experiences and lifestyles on. And I'm, of course, talking about the granddaddy of sadism, the libertine Marquis De Sade.
Yeah.
I've read his books. I've read them all. I have audiobooks on them, and you can actually get most of his classics for free, including the audiobooks for free. You can literally just Google it and you'll be able to download those for free legally. But as I said, not exactly realistic or appropriate to what people necessarily will ever consent to. So I'm going to start off the list.
He was sick and twisted. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to agree, but honestly, I still love it as far as fiction goes.
Yes. And for those that don't know, the Marquis de Sade, that's the Sade there is where the term sadist and sadism and comes from. So just a real brief history lesson there, but it is absolute fiction. I can't really think of too many things out of any of that life or the books that is something that anybody should try.
True, but as far as the history of the culture and the word sadism itself goes, which is a big part of our culture for many, I definitely think they're at least worth getting the basic understanding of, which is why they are on the list.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you can't talk about it without talking about them. So yeah, definitely. All right, what else you got?
I'm actually going to dive a little bit into his works. Just a little bit. I'm going to keep it pretty behaved. So we're going to start off with Justine, one of his most famous works. Justine explores a whole world of human sexuality, torture, imprisonment, and the duality of the justice system. But even though it doesn't quite explore true BDSM and power dynamics, it is a wonderful read. Huge fan. I'm a Gemini, and there's this whole concept of twins. And of course, Justine is a story of a woman and her sister and how their different paths and different choices shape their lives and the worlds around them. Huge fan of that aspect as well. Next on my list is 120 Days of Sodom. It's a novel of erotic orgies. While it sounds fun in a sense, this particular tale is all about sexual abuse, torture, not the fun kinds, and finally the slaughter of several characters involved. There is some incestual behavior in this. There is some borderline pedophilia. All in all, it's a very touchy subject for many people. If any of these are hot points for you, definitely don't read it.
Yeah. It's probably one of the more intense ones.
Yes. All right. There are several other works by De Sade. Many of them are available for free. It is, however, important to remember that while De Sade inspired the word sadism for his works on featuring pain in a sexual setting, much of what he actually portrayed is not respectful or caring. It is, in fact, abusive, often non-consensual acts in vivid detail. So definitely keep that in mind anytime you go to look at his books.
Yeah, it's something that can be fun to dance around, but it's really again works of fiction, which means that it is not true, not things that have actually happened. Well,
thankfully,
I'm sure most of it has happened one way or another, but as you said, non-consensual acts and not what we represent here on this show. So,
or in the lifestyle for the most part.
Yeah.
I will include that. I don't want people that are newbies getting terrified if they happen to pick up a De Sade book and going, oh my God, all these people are horrible, torturous monsters. We're not. We're just people. What we do is respectful and consensual.
Yes, absolutely. Is that it with wrapping up De Sade?
That is it. That's going to wrap up De Sade.
Okay.
The next on the list is The Way of a Man with a Maid by Anonymous. It's one of my favorites. This novel portrays a man who is fascinated by a young woman, which leads to acts of obsession, bondage, and questionable consensual content. It's highly erotic, but again, doesn't accurately portray the consent necessary for anyone truly in the lifestyle. It's a longer book, so if you don't really have time to sit there and clip through a really long book, this is not really one for you.
That definitely wouldn't be for me.
Yeah, that definitely would not be you. Maybe you could go through and clip through to the more erotic scenes.
I'll have to do that.
I'm just saying, I feel like most people do that.
All right. So that was The Way of a Man with a Maid. And next we've got one of my favorite authors, and I'm chiming in here because I absolutely love Anne Rice. She is, strangely enough, one of the people that I do read. This Sleeping Beauty series is one of my favorites. What is it for you?
For me, it's an illustration of the traditional tale of Sleeping Beauty in a more erotic light. It does display certain fetishes and parts of the lifestyle. Honestly, not one of my favorite Anne Rice pieces, but I'm not a huge Anne Rice fan. I liked the original Interview with the Vampire and those books, but after that, they kind of went wah, wah, wah for me personally. Just saying, personal preference.
She did start kind of going through a period where she liked some of the, as I refer to it, the Stephen King tangents. But I don't know. It's just one of those things I can't really explain why I like her, but I do. I do get she is certainly not for everybody. Some people, they don't like what she writes about. Other people don't like her writing style. I would imagine that to be the case with you. You're not a big fan of her writing style. But yeah, it's pretty good to me. I enjoy it, but I definitely understand that her style isn't for everybody, and in the way that she gets a little descriptive and tangential from time to time. But it's I guess more of a slower type setting, which kind of surprises me. I think it's because the whole Interview with the Vampire series is when I started reading her books, and I was just so enthralled with the topic that it's like, well, let's go ahead and pick up other things. Let's check out the rest. So she's probably the slowest author that I will care to read. All right. Next, this person that you've got here, I'm a big fan of.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
I'm very surprised.
So go ahead. Let's, who is she?
She is Maya Banks, and I have on here the Enforcer series, which is the books Mastered, Dominated, and Kept. It's 3 books which mix eroticism, BDSM, with more romantic notes. They're really quite enjoyable, especially if you are a fan of romantic novels and want a touch of something a little bit kinky thrown in.
Yeah, and To be perfectly honest, I had a girlfriend back when I was an assistant manager of a bookstore that really enjoyed her. And so she kind of talked me into it. And I mean, romantic novels is so incredibly not me, but I mean, they're not quite the Harlequin romance novels. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of touches on maybe my softer, kinkier side. I don't know. Yeah, shush. So there's my one little soul bearing, my embarrassing thing when it comes to your list of books here. You know me. I'm always trying to give of myself.
Yes, you sure do like to give.
Oh, and you were saying if it makes you what?
Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, the next two on the series will be very soul-bearing for me. The first one is the Crucial Legacy series by Jacqueline Carey, which set off my exploration of the lifestyle. I read the very first novel in the series when I was only 13 years old, and when its subject matter was discovered, it led to a talk, which led to my training years later. And of course, the talk I'm talking about is that I had the book laying face down, open up to a particularly erotic BDSM scene, which the book is filled with them because the main character is a hardcore masochist. And it led to some family friends who are part of the lifestyle taking a look at it, reading through what I had been reading, just glancing over the page and immediately starting to talk to me and, of course, question how I was feeling and make sure I was okay with everything that I was reading if I understood it. And they are the ones who eventually introduced me to my trainer when I came of age. So this book is really responsible for where I am today. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah, like I said, very soul-bearing. Anyway, these are fantastic books. They do have some political intrigue where if you're a huge fan of Game of Thrones like I am, you'll definitely enjoy that point of them, as well as the eroticism and the BDSM components.
Very cool.
And finally, we have the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series by Laurel K. Hamilton. I actually have one of my best friends reading this series right now.
Would that be Bratty Red?
It is not Bratty Red. I have loaned the first book in the series to Bratty Red, but she has yet to read it. She is busy knitting. Like an 80-year-old lady. I love her, but she's old at heart and she knows it. But the series, as it moves along, begins to depict more and more of the lifestyle and eventually features a submissive character, Nathaniel, to explore what it's like for some of us out there. And for any submissives out there that want an ideal of what my magical unicorn is like, look at Nathaniel. That personality right there, that submissiveness, that's my wish to have, not gonna lie. Doesn't matter to me if they're male or female, of course. Oh, I love him so much. And what's more is that these novels, despite their fantasy and sci-fi setting, still manage to mostly accurately display everything from fetish clubs to power dynamics to the role of protectors. I'm clearly a huge fan. There's something like 27 of the books out there in the series. I absolutely love them. I honestly kind of want to move to St. Louis where the books are set, just so that I can go explore the areas that these books are set in. Not gonna lie.
You know, you don't have to move. There are vacations.
Oh no! You know I want to move.
Oh, you're a super fan.
No, not at all. It's not like I have the graphic novel versions of the first 3 books in the series. Oh wait, I do.
Yeah, imagine that.
Huge fan. And of course, I'm sure at this point people are going, wait a second, this is the end of the fictional list. Why isn't the Gorian series on here? And of course, that is because the Gorian series is getting its own episode later on this season.
Yeah. And that's... Yeah. How many of those books are there? 53? 57?
Yeah, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to reread all of them. I've only gotten through the first 3 in the entire series. So I'm, I've got some work to do.
I actually, I know you want, I think that you want to read them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's good for me to read them to get a better perspective of those that are trying to live the lifestyle.
Well, I was going to say, if not, I do know someone locally that is I would say somewhat of an expert on the series that I may talk about bringing on when we discuss it. I haven't said anything to them yet about it. So as we move forward with it and when you're ready to do that episode, then we may go ahead and pull them in and you two can sit back and have a conversation while I'm sitting back and
preparing to edit that conversation, essentially.
Exactly. That's pretty much my job with this episode and will be my job with that episode. I'm just going to be around to do the editing and publish this stuff. So, obviously there are a lot of books out there that we haven't touched on that are absolutely phenomenal. There's a lot out there that are absolute trash. And like we said earlier, Funsize is going to start a thread. We're going to make it a sticky on the FetLife group, Kuldrin's Krypt, a Bdsm 101 podcast. You just search for Kuldrin and it'll come up, Kuldrin, and you can find that. But feel free to add to that. Let's hear what your favorite books are, what you've read that you don't like, what you do like. I'm sitting here trying to remember one that a friend recently told me about that she's been reading. It's a sci-fi, basically like one of the Japanime movies where there's a lot of tentacle.
Hentai? Are you talking about hentai?
Hentai. Yeah, Japanime, which is what it used to be called because it's Japanese animation. So Japanime. That shows my age because that was ages ago. But it gets into a lot of tentacle type erotic situations and things like that. There's a lot of, the variety is phenomenal. Even as someone who is not a bookworm, I have a massive collection of books. I love them. I've said before, I prefer to turn the page than scroll the mouse. Wow, you could take that a few different ways.
I was about to say something, but then it was not PG-13. So
yeah.
Cough.
Anyway, what else do you have? Are there any other books that you can think of that maybe aren't on our list or?
Well, what I'm thinking of right now is that even with the books and everything, we have so missed the fan fiction, and I'm not going to put that on a sticky, but anyone that wants BDSM-centric fan fiction can certainly send me a message, and I will be happy to recommend plenty.
There is.
It's one of my guilty pleasures. I'm going to own it.
There's one person on FET that if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you've got to check out her writing. She goes by Castle Crumbs. She's on my friends list. She writes some amazing Game of Thrones fan fiction. I highly recommend if anybody is wanting a more erotic side of that and some fan fiction, check her out. Castle Crumbs. Phenomenal person. A lot of respect for her and her writing. So is there any other final thoughts that you've got for this?
No, just make sure you check out that sticky once I've got it posted.
Excellent.
It's going to be massive.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Knowing you. All right. Well, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. Funsize, thank you again so much for all that you do and putting this together. This is an episode that I find to be very important, even though, yes, it's short, but there's so many people out there that get so much information from reading and just so much enjoyment in life from sitting down and reading a book and relaxing after a hard day at work or whatever. Maybe they're at work reading. Who knows? But seriously, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
The final notes. I'd like to thank our executive producer, Jeremiah, our senior producer, Matt, producer, Missy Lynn, and our junior producers, K2SO, Irish Mountain Dragon, Funsize Husband, and the Accidental Trucker. If you would like to become one of our show producers, go to the website, kuldrinscrypt.com/support me to get that information. Second, I'd like to thank BDSM Contracts for their donation of their beautiful 25-page soft and hardbound MS and DS contracts. You can find them at bdsmcontracts.org. Use the coupon code Kuldrin20 for a 20% discount off of all purchases. Next, I would really love to thank, so I'm going to, whippingstripes.com, my personal maker of leather and paracord impact toys. I just got a pair of full leather floggers with a 4-foot snake whip from them, made out of the same leather. It's all my traditional colors, the really dark red and black. They are phenomenal. I broke them in last night at the dungeon, and I absolutely could not be happier with them. And their prices are phenomenal for the quality. I mean, they've got high quality at like cheap Amazon flogger prices. So definitely check them out. I don't have any discount codes because her prices are already so low. I don't have any arrangement, not making any money off of that recommendation. I just absolutely love them. One thing that I'm going to ask that I've never asked before, if you would go to iTunes and rate and review the show. I've never once asked for anyone to do that, but it does help to give us a little bit of a boost. And I think we've only got 2 ratings and reviews there in iTunes because I've never asked for it. So if you don't mind, please run over to your iTunes account and throw us up a little 5-star rating. We would greatly appreciate that. We can now be found on iHeartRadio as well. I'm proud of that. There's only 7 BDSM podcasts there at iHeartRadio, and we happen to be one of those 7 right now. We're top of the charts. So thank you so much to all of our Krypters. You guys are awesome. You are patient with me in getting these episodes out. The past few months, I've had an extremely difficult time in my personal life with a family member that we almost lost, and several other things, changes with work, and Funsize has had some things going on too. So we really appreciate you continuing to support us, and just thank you. So with that said, next week on the Krypt, we're going to dive into consent, one of the most important topics that we can talk about here, go over every aspect of it, and really not leave any stone unturned. In the meantime, go to Kuldrin'sKrypt.com for show notes, how to subscribe information, and the link to our FetLife group so you can take part in the conversation and be eligible for our giveaways. While you're there, click on the Support Us tab to become one of our producers. You can find all of our contact information at Kuldrin'sKrypt.com. If you want to contact us directly, you can email me, sir@Kuldrin'sKrypt.com, or email Funsize at
Funsize@Kuldrin'sKrypt.com.
All right. This has been Master Kuldrin and Funsize for Kuldrin'sKrypt.com. Unearth the truth.